Greetings. I hope I see a couple people are here. Welcome. Wish I was a better host for this evening, but I'm feeling shitty tonight. Hopefully, everyone else is doing a little better or a lot better. And I really don't have anything to say. Let's see, what am I supposed to do here? I guess just to check in. I've been dealing with a lot of depression and some real world issues that I don't feel like going into. So both internal and external forces have been hard on me lately. And I guess I'm noticing at the moment the difference between wanting to do something and not wanting to not do it. I don't exactly want to be here doing this full moon live stream, but I definitely didn't want to not do it. I felt shitty about the one I missed. And I've been doing bad enough that my time horizon has generally been quite short. So I've mostly been trying to get through the now of things without worrying about the past or future. So even though I knew I was going to do this tonight, I did not prepare, because just getting through the now of each moment of today was about all I could do. So I didn't brainstorm things to talk about. I had nothing to read to start this off. I don't know, maybe this one will be quite short. But I didn't not do it this month. Happy Robot says, "Hey man, good you're alive. We are all unwell, especially given the nature of things since 2000. Well, glad you're pleased that I'm alive. And sure, everyone's unwell in their own way. Although I don't know what the nature of things has been since 2000. In your experience of the world, what's the nature of things since 2000, as opposed to how they were before? And are you a happy robot because you were programmed to be? Or did you evolve into a happy robot?" Russ Miller says, "I'm here." Hi, Russ. Hope you're having a good night. Jesse Leon says, "Be stoic and brave it." I'm doing my best. Hey, and Nolan's here. Oh, I miss talking to you, Nolan. I'm sorry we never got around to that last talk that like you'd written in about. Be nice to talk to you again sometime soon. I just haven't been feeling up to doing audience conversations. How you doing? Grizz says, "Dark one tonight." Yeah. And how about you, Grizz? How you doing? Jesse Leon says, mushrooms help me with my depression and childhood scars. So, you talking a full trip, or are you talking about microdosing? Heard someone recently talking about microdosing. Not sure where it was. Depression makes me fucking stupid. I don't think well when I'm this depressed. Memories are harder to access. I was listening to something recently where someone was talking about microdosing, and I'd never really considered it before. When I was listening to it recently, I wondered. All right, so Happy Robot says, good. Well, mostly. Oh, good. A happy robot should be doing good. Adela Darling's here. Merc, hi, good to see you. It's good to see you too, Adela. How's this full moon treating you? And if people are doing well, don't hold back. I know some people think that when you're talking to someone who's depressed, you have to hold back if you're doing well. And yeah, and to be fair, some people who are depressed don't want to hear about somebody else doing well. But I'm not that way at all. I would love it if everybody was having a fantastic night. And hearing that others are doing well when I'm doing shitty, I like that. It doesn't make me feel worse about myself. So if anyone's doing well, don't hold back. Hey, and Andrew's joining us. All right, Grizz says, so that Snyder fellow says, change your posture will change your mood. Yeah, I saw that, and it's same as Peterson says. That's why his whole stand up straight shit is based on the same thing. But I watched some more Snyder videos since you recommended that one to me, and I went through some of his exercises where he tries to prove that stand, picture this. I went through a few of those exercises, and while I'm not negating what him and Peterson say at all, like, but my own experience of it is that it's not as all encompassing as they both seem to say it is. And it seems like, but that could very well be just me. I'm often the exception to the rule with things. So I would not be surprised if for other people. But like when he goes through the exercises, you remember something bad, put yourself in that posture, remember something good. And then when he does the whole, once you're feeling good, hold that position. And okay. So I see that you just wrote sit up straight when you tell me it doesn't work. Okay, no, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I went through it and it worked. But then when he said, okay, now try to hold the posture and get back the bad feeling, I was able to do those. It was harder to do it, but I could still do them. However, I'm fucking insane. And I'm often the exception to the rule in many ways. So maybe it fully works for other people, but which is just making jump into my mind. One thing I got good at years and years ago was concealing how poorly I'm doing. Was to have a panic attack in public in such a way that no one notices that I'm having a panic attack, or to be suicidally depressed without it bleeding out of me in every breath and bringing other people down. So I've had years of assuming other body language to cover what's going on inside me. And so maybe that has built up my ability to hold a different state than my body posture. So Happy Robot says, go easy on mushrooms, easy does it. Yeah, ever since taking being bipolar seriously, I haven't done any hallucinogenics. I did a bunch of mushrooms the first time I went full blown manic, and I did a bunch of mushrooms before that. I liked mushrooms all through my 20s, but I haven't been doing it since I was, yeah, since I've taken being bipolar seriously. Jesse says it was a pretty good trip, and I'm thinking of self hypnosis with mushrooms. Um, yeah, hallucinogenics are just something powerful. They can be fantastic, they can be problematic. But I know someone else who has, different mental issues than me, but still like pretty strong ones, who said that they were trying microdosing with mushrooms and said it helped with depression and anxiety and a bunch of stuff. At the time they were telling me about it, it was a few years ago. I was not wanting to mess with anything. Like I was content with slow, steady progress and wasn't wanting to change anything up. The possibility of improvement wasn't worth the risk of going downhill if it ended up being counterproductive. I'm really good at getting behind on comments for no reason. I'm sure I could have been going through this in a better fashion. But Grizz is answering from back when I asked how he was doing. It's been a rough one, but I've had worse. All right, well, good that it's not worse. And all right, Nolan says, I'm doing pretty good. I wasn't feeling well for the last few weeks, though, still not 100%. Glad you're doing pretty good now. What was going on for the last few weeks? Like physically unwell or emotional problems or what? Yeah, and with me, when I titled this Alive and Unwell, I meant it in both ways. I also have a cold, so if my voice is different, or there's a good chance I could start getting phlegmy again, be blowing my nose. Happy Robot says, man, I've been depressed for years now. You've been depressed straight for years? Or you mean you've had significant amount of depression for years? First two times, like after I first graduated into insanity, my cycle was 3 years long. And so it still holds sort of the same ratio. I'm like a lot of people, sort of 1/3 up into mania, 2/3 down into depression. But my first two cycles were 3 years long. So it would be mania for, although both of the, I guess one mania lasted about a year. The first one didn't, but because I was institutionalized and like brought down heavy sedatives. But yeah, my depression will go for a year, or sorry, my mania in the first two cycles was like basically a year long of mania. And then when it crashed, I was depressed for 2 years straight, twice. So if you've been depressed for years, I know what that's like. Over a year of straight depression where you're never happy for a moment is brutal. And I've been extremely depressed all month since the last full moon, but I handle it better than I used to. So I've spent a certain amount of time depressed and miserable. I've also spent a fair amount of time depressed and through a lot of effort managing to find a way to be both depressed and okay at the same time, or even depressed. And yeah, I've managed to have some time of depressed and happy. I've had some time with my kids that I was able to genuinely enjoy it despite the ache that was inside as well. But back during my first 2 cycles, I had no ability to put the depression in its place. It was just depression and suffering. And our good friend Andrew says, my first few mushroom trips were amazing and life altering. My last few were odd, full of anxiety. Yeah, and I did mushrooms the way Harris and a lot of people criticize when I was younger. It wasn't about expanding my consciousness or anything like that. It was just fucking partying and playing with it. I've had a variety of very good and very bad experiences on mushrooms. And Happy Robot says it's partial for sure. And Grizz says, yeah, stage hypnotist kicked me off and said crazy people don't go under. Well, I can achieve all kinds of altered states. I'm sure if I trusted a hypnotist, I could be hypnotized. I wouldn't be surprised if I could be hypnotized. But I would be surprised if there wasn't something abnormal about the way I was once hypnotized, or that there weren't exceptions to it. But yeah, I would assume with hypnotism and all that those of us with unusual brains would respond in unusual, more unpredictable ways. And Happy Robot said, but next time try to raise your arms up in victory, even if no victory. So is that from when we were talking about the hold your position? Because yeah, when Snyder, in the one video I watched, made you go through trying to achieve a good moment, yeah, it wasn't just standing up straight. You had people like that, or however, if you just achieved something. And for me, sort of that yes moment was more like this. And yeah, if I try to, I played with it. I can hold, I can find a posture that has that feeling of victory, and I can hold that and bring up all the miserable shit. Now, perhaps that wouldn't work if I was feeling manic. The thing is, right now, I'm in my depressed swing. Because, yeah, I was saying before, my old cycle was 3 years. I cycle in line with the seasons now. I have a 1-year cycle. And so, to a certain degree, I feel like this every year at this time of year. And Andrew says, to Happy Robot, Terrence McKenna's last trip made him give up mushrooms for good. I don't know if I've ever heard him talk about that. I listened to a bunch of his stuff. Or if I did, it's not coming to mind. Like I said, depression makes me stupid. It's harder to think, harder to remember. And in fact, I was observing that recently, the difficulty in remembering when you're depressed. And I found for me, it made me sort of find the way in which we think of memory like we just pull up the memory, like we pull up the account of what happened. But when I'm really depressed and memory's harder, and when just mental functions are harder, I notice trying to remember something. It's exhausting. And it's like I don't have the energy to do that mental work of filling in the gaps in what's being remembered with what you will logically assume. And like I've heard people discussing like the science of that. And you do, when you retrieve memories, we do alter them. We fill in details based on what we take fragmented things and we assemble the story. And when I'm manic, that all just fills in automatically. And so I've noticed before, I remember, all right, yeah, I'll remember things in different ways when I'm manic or depressed. But when I'm manic, the way we have to actively make things up to recall memories flows so naturally, it doesn't feel like I'm doing it. But when I'm depressed, because that's all not working well and going slow enough, I notice it. It's like, ah, oh, for fuck's sakes, I don't want to try to remember that. I don't want to put that effort into making sense of the partial stuff that's there and having to edit it. I don't know what got me going on that. Here's a bunch of comments about mushrooms. Which I don't have anything to respond to. And to a certain degree, this is you guys talking to each other. So I'm going to stop trying to respond to everything. Oh, I've already gotten over 20 minutes into this. I'm noticing already how fucking tiring even something as simple as just sitting here and talking, responding to comments is. But I'll read this one by Damawa. I did mushrooms twice, one good trip, one bad. I've left mushrooms as an evenly balanced experience in memory. Interesting. And as far as getting to know mushrooms, yeah, there's something complete about that. Because as much as bad trips suck, there's a value. You learn something from going through a bad trip. Just like I learn things from going through psychotic breaks. You learn things by going through suicidal depression. Andrew says, I swore off hallucinogenics, cannabis over a year ago, and it had forced me to get those same feelings from meditation and lucid dreaming. And so, first of all, like just, and for anyone who's watching this, yeah, like Andrew's the guy who started this channel, and like good for you on that. Both me and you have actually taken that for granted about you when we talk. Cause you've got all this other shit you're working on, but like notice that as far as drugs, it's like, just go back a few years and it was a problem for you. And it was one of those goals you set for yourself. I want to get clean off drugs. And now you are and have been for so long. Like, good for you. And yeah, the other reason I haven't felt as much of a need to go back to hallucinogenics the past few years is with meditation and rituals. combined with the nature of my mind, I can achieve some pretty intense altered states without them. Okay, so I think this... Fuck, I hope I'm not mixing things up now. Oh, well, fuck it. If I am... Whatever. My brain's not working right. I'll just work on being okay with that in the moment. So yeah, pretty much straight, milder than has been before, but constant. Yeah, so I think this is, I had asked if you've been depressed for years straight. I think this is in response to that. And yes, I associate happiness through the midst. Hooray, do the victory makes me feel better. Victory is continuing while in the mud. Yeah, and as like pathetic as it can be, to get through real depression, you've got to allow it to be heroic, to just endure to the best of your ability. Like, even if the depression beats you so badly that you are not functioning in any way, and you are outwardly pathetic and have given up, but it's because inside you want to kill yourself, and everything you can do is to just not kill yourself and endure it. As pathetic as that is, if you can see the way in which that is heroic, it gets you through. All right, so Andrew says, Merc, I've been doing well following my budget thanks to your advice. I also sold a video today to a company and making lots more that will hopefully sell as well. That's fucking awesome. Yeah, I'm really proud of you, man. You're doing great on so many levels. What was the video about? So Nolan says, okay, yeah, I was asking him if he wasn't doing well physically or emotionally. And Nolan says physically, but some anxiety as well. I was getting dizzy on occasion and felt the happiness in my chest, abdomen that made breathing more difficult, or seemed more difficult at least. Yeah, sounds like anxiety. Okay, I'm going to jump down and I see you've written some more. They did some tests and found I was getting too much oxygen, so I had to adjust my ventilator accordingly. Still having some of that heaviness. That's better or worse depending on the day. Oh, okay. Before it was heaviness in the chest. If it was happiness, that would have been great. Oh, okay. So just getting too much oxygen was causing the anxiety symptoms. And I wonder how much when, yeah, I can notice sometimes when I'm having anxiety, like I'm breathing too much, I'm taking in too much air. Other than that, have you ever had any anxiety issues that wasn't from anything like that? Frankie wrote, "Old man, what the fuck are you doing?" Just rambling about whatever comes into my head. Other than that, there's no plan here. How you doing tonight, Frankie? I don't think I've heard from you before. Happy Robot says, allow it to be heroic. I'm stealing that line. Awesome. Yeah, and it is. You'll allow it to be heroic if it's in a fiction. You read a good book about a character who's really suffering and doesn't give up, and like it doesn't matter how low the character is. If the author or in a film or something, if they can give you a sense of how difficult it can be for someone and they just don't give up on that, you can see it in someone else more easily. With everything, it's so easy to be negative. Um, like with comedy, it's so easy to be funny if you're tearing someone down. It's so easy to act cool by just being negative about shit. It's so much easier to see the flaws in things. And you can do it about anything. You can mock something for being shitty, or you can mock something for being too high quality if you find the right angle. And just start calling it pretentious, or now you can mock the person for having to have something else of extraordinarily high quality to compensate. And you can turn anything negative really easy. It's not hard. And when we get depressed, especially if we have clever depression, it can turn anything shitty. So you got to hold on to a few basic things to answer with. All right, here's something more uplifting from Andrew. The video was a Tongan song sung by a school class, mixed in with clips of the Tongan landscape. I'll send it to you once they release it. Awesome. Yeah, I'd like to see that. Asa, good to see you. I actually thought of you before going on when I was just sitting waiting for it to be midnight. Um, yeah, I don't remember now. I think Grizz had reached out to you to set up a talk and we didn't hear back from you. Or did I not have Grizz do that? But yeah, we could have a talk. And yeah, is it that we didn't reach out to you a couple weeks ago, or had you just not gotten back to us? But yeah, right into the channel, and Grizz is fucking awesome. Like to help me cope with all this being overwhelming, Grizz will set us up a time, and he'll give us a Zoom link so we can chat. You still doing as bad? You doing better, or you doing worse lately? Happy Robot says that's a cool way to put it. I'm so good at being negative in the last 5 years. Yeah, and it's easy to be negative and it's easy to feel clever about being negative. If you're clever and a little vulgar about it and do it in the right way, you can get lots of positive feedback as well. And I find indulging that counterproductive. And so, with a lot of shit, I just refuse to take seriously my own opinion on it at the moment. It's like I take a reading of the internal landscape, which way the wind's blowing, and I counter. And so at the moment, the depression wind's blowing strong. So I know that anything I think is going to be off target in that direction. Nolan says, I might have always had some mild anxiety or maybe not. Okay, I've never had a panic attack before or anything. Yeah, I've had full blown panic attacks where I almost pass out. Benjel says, hey, Merc, glad to see you're still fighting the good fight. Hope everyone here is hanging in there. Thanks, pal. Good to see you. How you doing tonight? Damala says, I have to get some sleep. Got to work early. Have a great night, Mercury. Wish I could stay up. Well, thanks for joining us. Hope you get a great night's sleep and have a great day at work tomorrow. Mike Anderson says, what's that beeping sound? I don't know. I don't hear a beeping sound at all. I have music on in the background extremely quietly. I can just barely hear it. I don't think it would be picking up the music at all. But there's no beeping in the music. How you doing tonight, Mike Anderson? Sorry, I'm not doing better with this. I like you people. It's a nice group of people who turn up here. Like, even with what I said before about countering where I'm not necessarily as pathetic as I feel. But still, wish I was doing better. It's an interesting opportunity, this, to interact with people around the world. I just wish I could give you something better. Grizz says that turning stuff negative, I'm fractaling that out to humanity more and more. Like everything that's so easy to shitting on it when you consider how hard it is to be human. It's like when a little kid draws you a picture and you tell them how it's crap because they're a kid drawing a picture. Who tells a little kid their picture's crap? But yeah, I found when I'm depressed also, I get really sensitive to that in comedy. Like, and I do still like comedy. Fuck, it's so mean. And then there's the impulse to shit on the people shitting on people. That's also shitting on someone. It's just as fucking bad. And yeah, it can be really hard to be human in two ways. It can come from outside and it can come from inside. When it comes from outside, we usually give the person a lot of respect. Like it's hard to be a human when a bear attacks. Someone gets mauled by a bear. You get a lot of respect for the pain and difficulty. Someone goes through, especially you go through something that's not your fault. You're injured in a war zone and there's no blame that you weren't causing any shit. You get your leg blown off by a landmine. It can also just be really hard to be human from the inside out, even when it doesn't look like it is from the outside. Happy Robot says, "What's your favorite music?" Um, Tom Waits, and punk music, and metal, and oh, folk and reggae. I like a lot of different music, but three bands I have tattoos of are Motorhead, Tom Waits, and the Ramones. And Grizz says that reply did come at ASA. Sorry, I missed it. Oh, okay. But yeah, so we'll be setting up a talk. Desitron. I like that name. Anyway, Desitron says, "Do you remember when you gave me advice a year ago on a live stream? I hadn't had a drink in 2 weeks, longest time in a decade, I think. I stopped watching porn and cut back on caffeine too. You definitely helped, though it has taken a while to change my thought patterns. I wish I could say I remember, but I'd rather be honest with you. I'm sorry, I don't remember. But my memory doesn't work as well when I'm depressed. Maybe if I wasn't depressed, I'd remember. Or maybe I still wouldn't. I've noticed one of the ways I deal with this channel is I put it all the fuck out of my head after. Well, I'll allow myself a certain amount of thinking about stuff after. And I did more of that early on, but to a large degree, I'm just releasing everything I do on here. Like emotionally releasing and detaching and letting myself forget it. I think it's a bit of a coping mechanism to not fall into self criticism or else. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of shit on here that rewatching it I would be depressed or embarrassed about. But so I don't remember. I hope I gave you good advice. You haven't had a drink in 2 weeks, the longest time in a decade. Stopped watching porn and cut back on caffeine too. Well, that's fucking fantastic. What you say about it helped, though it took a while to change thought patterns. Yeah, I find, again, I don't know what I told you, or aside from whatever little help I was, what else you found that helped. But notice you learn a new way of thinking or being, or you understand something at a new level. I find you have to live something for years. sometimes before it sinks in. And you have to know something for a while before it sinks in enough that you can act on it. And then acting on it will give you a deeper insight into whatever that is, and a feedback loop can be created where the mental work you do, I find it's like it takes time to percolate certain things. And as you understand something, after being with a certain thought for long enough, you learn how to act with it. And then that lets you understand it more deeply, and you can act it out better. So managing to go 2 weeks without drinking, especially if you haven't done that in 10 years, is fantastic. Congratulations. I wish you all the best at continuing with it. How hard has it been? And has there been any upside since quitting? Because quitting shit can be hard. Have you gotten an upside from it yet? Or has it just been white knuckling it? Benjel says, I'm doing all right. Still working through divorce process, but doing a lot better overall than last time we talked. Great. Sometimes what's more important even than where we are is just which direction we're going. We can often get very caught up on where we are, in whatever sense, socially, mentally, emotionally, where we are at work. But it can be way more important which direction you're going. Are you in a shitty place, but things are improving? Sometimes that's better than being in a good place where things are slowly starting to unravel. And Happy Robots wishing you good luck, Angels. Happy Robot says, this is great. No better could be. Mike Anderson says, doing good, man. Been subbed to the channel for a while, but haven't seen any streams. Things have been turning around for me lately. Went through a breakup recently, but feel I've learned a lot. Well, I'm glad you joined us tonight, Mike. I'm glad to hear that. Things are turning around. The impulse is to say sorry to hear you had the breakup, but what the fuck do I know? Maybe that's best. I'm glad you've managed to learn something from your difficulties. Asa, I saw the email. I just left it unread for a week or two. I was stressed with finding work and being overwhelmed with depression is why I delayed in responding. I'll email again to set something soon. Okay, cool. Yeah, and no worries about that. I understand that completely. I have so much trouble checking email messages and shit like that at times. So no worries at all. I'm sure we'll connect and talk whenever the time's right. Hey, Dick. Dick Justice says, I've been thinking of going into an isolation chamber. They have them in spas here in Ottawa. Apparently, the experience can be similar to psychedelics, where you lose a sense of where your body is. Um, yeah, I would love to try one of those. Oh, for me, I fucking hate leaving my house. I'm a fucking shut in. So I don't know. I don't know if I could go somewhere public and use one of those sensory deprivation chambers. Maybe once I was in it, I'd be all right, but I don't know. Mike says, I find during the winter, I tend to get depressed usually. I've had a knee injury for the past two, and I've gained a new appreciation for the cold. Helps keep the swelling down and I can walk further. Yeah, I'm depressed every winter now. Being bipolar, there's the yearly cycle. Like there's the cycle anyway of up and down. But I've also been depressed throughout a whole year straight, and I prefer depression in the winter. It's at least in sync with everything else. You can feel, I can feel a sense of connection to the dying and freezing nature, the animals hibernating. Feels in sync with the forest god, the male counterpart to the eternal female fertility goddess, who she's immortal, lives steadily, but the male counterpart, the forest god's born every spring, grows every summer, spends every winter dead. And Grizz sent you something? Okay, so we'll get that set up. Happy Robot says internal bear attacks receive less praise. Yes. Desitron says, great taste in music. You guys asked me what I really care about, and I said something like intellectual pursuits. You said just find something that I want to do more than get drunk and do that instead. Okay, that's triggering something. A little hint of memory. So, what did you find that you wanted to do more than getting drunk? So, you said you haven't drank in 2 weeks, and in those 2 weeks, there hasn't been, was it porn and something else? So, you've cut a lot out. What have you replaced it with? Grizz says, I was just thinking it'd be neat if you could swap depression with someone for even 10 minutes, to have some gauge to measure your own by. I think trying on yours, mine might be like happiness. Perhaps. But when, and yeah, that whole idea is fascinating in a lot of ways. Like, how much do we understand each other at all? Because when we say things like happy and depressed or exciting or Also, that whole idea, do you see colors the way I do? Or the way people like different foods? I wonder what it's like to eat a food that I hate. Like, what's the experience like for someone else? We're always projecting. When we think we understand someone else, we're projecting. So if they say, whatever the fuck they say, yeah, if someone says, I'm feeling depressed, if you think you understand, what you're really doing is finding your own experience of depression, projecting it onto the person, assuming that's what they're talking about. So yeah, I wonder how would it affect your experience of depression if you could experience my experience of my depression? But at the same measure, it can also become, because it's not just how much depression I feel, it's also my own nature and my reaction to it as well. So it's like, instead to use an analogy of weight for depression, let's say I had 100 pounds of depression that I'm holding, and you're lifting 50 pounds of depression. We could argue then that I have twice the depression, hypothetically. But also, if you have two people, each standing in front of a 100-pound weight, being asked to lift it, and you say, are they being asked to lift the same amount of weight? And they're both being asked to lift exactly the same amount of weight, 100 pounds. But is that really the same amount of weight? If I weigh more than you, then I'm being asked to lift less than the percentage of my body weight. Like, if I'm 200 pounds, and I know you're not 100, but say you were, you're 100 pounds, and I'm 200 pounds, and we're both being asked to lift 100 pounds, is that the same thing? Because you're being asked to lift your entire body weight, and I'm being asked to lift half my body weight. Or even if we both were to weigh the same. So, say we both weigh 200 pounds, we both are being asked to lift 100 pounds of weight. But if I'm stronger than you, are we being asked to lift the same amount of weight? Like, if we're the same mass, but your muscles have atrophied, or you've had an injury, or you just don't have the muscle mass I do, we're both being asked to lift 100 pounds. But if 100 pounds is something I can lift, and 100 pounds is something you can't lift, is that the same thing? I'm being asked to lift an amount of weight I can lift. You're being asked to lift an amount of weight you can't lift. So that whole idea of, even just to say who's carrying more depression, it's not as straightforward. Because 100 pound, like the exact same amount of depression now that I've experienced before, I don't experience it in the same way. I'm capable of dealing with it in a way that I couldn't before. And it can still get me right to the point where, like, recently I was thinking to myself, well, I'm not going to kill myself, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now, am I really going to be able to keep doing this every year? I went through, spent more time than is ideal thinking about how to kill myself, like planning it without intending to follow through, allowing myself to fantasize about it, just as like fucking escape valve. But even at that point, I can experience I experience that a little different than I used to. So it's hard to compare. There's no such thing as just a situation. A situation is always made up of a nature. Francisco says, our lives are the manifestation of our inner beliefs. There's at least some truth in that. That could be entirely true. For instance, I can't disprove solipsism. It could be only my inner beliefs that are creating all of this. That's hypothetically true. I expect others' inner beliefs and the nature of reality affect our lives as well. But definitely our inner beliefs interact with the outer nature of reality and the inner belief of others. And our lives are the manifestation of that in some extremely complicated fashion. But are our inner beliefs under our own control? And if so, how? Can you make yourself believe something you don't? And can you just unmake a belief? Even a belief you know isn't true. Think about being a little kid afraid of a monster under the bed. Even if you know it's not there, can you actually unmake that belief? You can say, I don't believe there's a monster under my bed. But if when it's dark and as you go to get out of bed, you feel that anxiety and fear, do you really believe it? And Grizz, in response to that, says, who put those beliefs in there? Yeah. Or even if someone didn't put them in there, from whence did they come? Did they grow there on their own? And Francisco says, Joseph Alay, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, is the best YouTuber on manifestation. In my case, the Western canon, my parents, and TV is where, okay. Um, well, cool. So, for anyone looking for a good YouTuber on manifestation, we can check out Joseph Alay or Alai, whatever that is. And Grizz responds, or so you believe. That's so fucking tiring. You've made me laugh a couple times. And when you're depressed, the energy that takes. How far am I from being caught up? And Andrew says he looked up that channel and he's read a lot of Neville Goddard, which seems similar. Desitron says, I'm actually able to get to the gym regularly and the heart palpitations have stopped. Excellent. The brain fogs I was getting have subsided. Fantastic. So how does that feel? Does it feel good? Some people don't like the way reality sharpens into focus when you're sober. How about you? How do you find the experience of the brain fogs clearing? Are you enjoying it? And Francisco is saying that Joseph Olay bases his lessons on that. And that Joseph hit rock bottom before finally testing out what he could do to change his life. Yeah, and I'm all for that. Experimental sort of interaction with reality to find out just what do we have control over and what can we change. And I'm not really sure what the fuck control I have over anything. I really understand Sam Harris when he says that he does not experience free will. So the same way that some people feel helpless to change the outer world, and they'll go to this idea to try to begin manifesting change in the outer world by changing the inner world. While the inner world inevitably changes, and while I do also experience sort of that illusion of free will, I can't quite find how that's actually under my control. But it is interesting to examine the connections between the inner and outer world and all the odd shit that happens when you start playing around with manifestation or magic, or when you step onto an intensely spiritual path. Okay, so Vilo F reality, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, says until people understand that sexual liberation is a form of political control and has been from day one, there is no way out of the deception. I'm not sure what that is in reference to. And I don't really know much about political control. I'm not very politically minded, and I'm fairly cut off from society. So I don't really have anything coming to mind to say in response to that. Ace is responding to Grizz. Oh, wait. I just went all the way to the bottom. Oh, wow. I'm way behind, aren't I? All right. So Desitron is looking forward to visiting my family in Japan and starting to learn Japanese. That's awesome. I don't know much about Japan, but it's a couple Japanese punk bands and some old Japanese movies that are fucking awesome. There's little snippets of Japanese subculture that I've been exposed to are really fucking cool. If I was of a mind to travel, if I wasn't doing such a good impersonation of a tree and putting down roots, it would be tempting to visit Japan. That's one place I'd really be tempted to experience more of. Happy Robot says the unraveling, I guess, has already happened. I cannot unravel anymore, so I guess the direction is good. There you go. Hey, Dan's here. Hey there, brother. Hey, good to see you, Dan. And I got your last messages and really appreciated them. But yeah, you said you understand if writing back is too much. So I still feel inclined to say, sorry, I didn't write back. I really appreciate those messages. But you told me not to fucking apologize. And you understand. But yeah, even when I don't feel up to writing back, I appreciate that. Nice to know you're out there struggling alongside us. So Vivek says, Satan, is that you? Are you finally collecting on my debt to you? No, you're off the hook for at least another night, Vivek. So what did you get out of your side of the bargain? And what do you owe? Grizz says the thought of floating in a public tank triggers my ick. Yeah, it'd be nice to be like Rogan and have your own private sensory deprivation tank. And the way he can sit there like a king and just summon anyone he wants to talk to. That would be cool too. So Francisco says that Joseph Allah and Neville Goddard might seem like mystical nonsense, but there's a scientific version of narrative therapy that has been proven to work among inmates. It has a 90% success rate. It helps them to rebuild their lives from scratch. If you can watch porn without fapping, then you get supercharged with motivation. Qualia can differ by degree, but not in kind, unless we're speaking pragmatically. Yeah. Okay, so what you said about might seem like mystical nonsense. I'm all up for mystical nonsense. And I agree with you that so much mystical nonsense, there is scientific explanations of why things can be beneficial and like seemingly mystical. But I'm also good with just fucking mystical nonsense. There's more to reality than what science can explain at the moment. So I don't know if I said anything that made it sound like I was putting mystical nonsense down. I don't at all. I do fucking magic rituals and talk to angels. So, and I'm very interested in the scientific explanation as well, and don't try to blend them. But there's interesting ways in which they connect. And yeah, Andrew's been recommending Neville Goddard to me for a while. I might look into that stuff at some point. Adela, darling, says, the broken are evolved. Rejoice. Guess it's from a movie. Love and light, everybody. I have to go. Well, you're probably already gone, but bye, Adela. Thanks for joining us. And Adela says, Merc, in pieces we heal. Have a great night. Thanks for stopping by. I wish you much love and light and sacred night. Happy Robot says, what is the mass of depression? Interesting. It feels weighty. Yeah, depression's fucking heavy. It's like if you took a whole bunch of big, thick wool blankets, like a whole fucking bunch of them, and soaked them in sour milk, and then draped them over you. So you have that disgusting, heavy, wet pressure all over you. And it's hard to breathe. Mike says, I've said before that projection and empathy are one and the same, but then again, perhaps that's just me projecting. But how could you understand how someone feels without referencing previous experience? Absolutely. Yeah, and so people will often talk about like projecting onto someone else, as in you shouldn't do that, but it's impossible not to. We will even project into something inanimate. Fuck, what was it I watched? Saw something recently where someone was saying something about human nature and then said to the point where I can tell you that this, and he was holding a pencil instead of a cigarette, but he said, I can tell you that this pencil's name is Steve. And he breaks the pencil and points out how you feel bad for the pencil because he named it before he broke it. So we can even project things into inanimate things. But yeah, it's the idea that projecting isn't good. It's unavoidable. What we shouldn't do is project something that isn't there at all. Like there is the bad form of projecting. Um, but yeah, that seems to me to be the only way we understand others at all. I'm going to try to skip more and see if I can get caught up. I'm not sure how far behind I am, but let's. Okay, Jewish Wookie. Hey, good to see you too. Yeah, long time no see. And Grizz says 24-hour Discord link. Merc has been there at least once. Yeah, I've been there a couple times. I don't really interact. And it's been a while since I've read through any of it, but sometimes I do go read through some of the Discord. I don't interact there, but Grizz does, and a bunch of other people do. Which is nothing against the people there. I can just only handle so many points of access and so much interaction. Desitron has been writing a short story and watching a lot of philosophy and psychology videos, but also playing video games. How's writing the short story going? What kind of story is it? Francisco says, when I was a kid, I had a reoccurring nightmare. So a counselor had me draw a picture of it and rip it apart. Totally worked. Yeah, I have no problem believing that worked. And it's another example because you can imagine it being a shaman advising that, with somebody being haunted by nightmares and being advised to, in some way, create something to capture the spirit of that nightmare and destroy it. But you can also see psychological reasons why that might work. And who cares? Sometimes when something works, also, who cares why the fuck it worked? That's fantastic. So, everyone remember that if you're having a reoccurring nightmare you want to get rid of. Draw a picture of it and rip it apart. Yeah, I find there's also something profoundly powerful about art. And if you like religion and magical traditions, you can use art for a lot. Francisco says, in my opinion, there's no free will outside of imagination. Humanity shares a collective imagination. Even in imagine and I'm perhaps paralogical about this. What I'm saying is I can 100% experience the reality where I can't observe free will anywhere. Even in imagination, it's like, where the fuck is that coming from? Am I really doing it? When I think of something for the first time, how could I have decided to think of it for the first time? And when I can't think of something new, it's something old coming to mind. Sam Harris explains all of that really well. I still can't find the free will there. On the other hand, I also experience, like, sort of the way Peterson talks about that deep emotional need we have for there to be free will. And there's a power in the illusion of it, even though it appears to be an illusion. And so I have decided that free will is some sort of mystery. And I kind of live in the world as though both are true, as though we do have free will and we don't. And it's hard to explain often how I do that, but the easiest example is I use now when I'm trying to be practical, because it's so easy to spiral when you've got two options to look at something. I found what's most practical for me is to treat the past as though there was no free will whatsoever. So when I look at the past, I often try to look at it. It makes it easier to be forgiving of others, but completely the way Sam Harris looks at it. Like, we're all stuck with our fucking nature in the situation. It couldn't have happened any other way. And also, like, from a phenomenological point of view, at this point at least, I don't seem able to change the past. Oh, well, there's the way, like, I think Peterson talks about, you can change the meaning of the past, you can change what it was, but I can't actually change the events. So from this point forward, I have no free will involving the past. However, there's something profound to the mysterious idea of free will. And so I imagine it from here going forward, although it's obviously limited. I assume from here forward, I have some aspect of free will. But it's also weird because you can never change now. Whatever the precise moment you're experiencing is, the moment of experiencing it, you can never change it. Your chance to change now was before. Like, to be standing now, I have to have gotten up before. I can change whether or not I'm standing later, but I can't change whether or not I'm standing now. And if I get up the moment I'm standing, I can't change that. I feel like this is just coming out like fucking nonsense. I'm going to move on. Mike says, I really appreciate how much thought you put into your responses. You want to help, but I can tell how much you're burdened by deep thought. I can relate to that. I think it says wanting to help, but weighed down. Yeah, you're reading me pretty well, Mike. In a way, I can't help but put this much thought into my responses. As much as my brain doesn't work well when I'm depressed, it's still, I don't know. In a way, thought often seems more real to me in the real world. And yeah, sometimes it's a thrill to have deep thoughts. And when I'm manic, I think so fast and the multiple trains of thought going on. It can be really fun at times, and other times it can be really burdensome. And being intelligent can be good and bad as well. I've had a lot of authority figures over my life tell me I'm too smart for my own good. And yeah, that's why I was saying before, I wish I could do better because at the moment it seems weird that I'm doing this at all. It's just all this weird blur of how this happened to begin with. But here I am, occasionally coming on here and just talking at my computer and actually connecting to people. And people show up and share things. And I would really like to help as many people as I can. But I'm also a pretty fucking pathetic loser, and life is not easy for me. Desitron says, but honestly, I'm probably having more dark thoughts now that I'm not so numb. Haha, you said as much as I was typing this. But I think I'm more capable of processing them now and reframing. Okay, so you're saying now that your sobriety's gone on long enough that reality's sharpening and the brain fog's moving out. I'm glad to hear that you're more capable of processing them and reframing. Yeah, reframing's a powerful tool. And in all my time alone, I spend a lot of time playing with reframing, noticing how you can take a situation and turn it into so many different things. Dick Justice says, I have to peace out. Godspeed, everyone. Well, thanks for joining us. I wish you love and light and sacred nights. Grizz says, manifestation working, but suicidal depression not working the way they claim manifestation does makes the manifestation stuff very suspect. All right, interesting point. Oh, perhaps the suicidal depression, even when it doesn't manifest in actual death, manifests in you deadening your life in various ways. I'm feeling too fucking stupid to explain. I think you have a good point. I think we could also reframe it that suicidal depression perhaps is causing manifestation, even if it's not manifesting the actual death. Desitron says, given your depression cycle, I wonder if moving to the southern hemisphere during the northern winter would be helpful. You could be in summer all the time, expensive though. I've wondered about that, except the fact that I'm bipolar, like whatever that means. I try to look at it from every perspective, from the mental illness perspective and from the more shamanistic perspective. Like I'm not limited by the other people's definitions of bipolar, but I'm definitely fucking bipolar, whatever that is. I will go through a cycle of depression and mania, um, regardless of the weather, because my first two went for 2 years. So I could be I can be manic in the winter and I can be depressed in the summer. So I don't know what moving to a place where it was summer all the time would do to me. If it wasn't for the expense factor, if like money was no object type thing, I might play around with what a different environment could do to me. But I don't have the means to play around with that. I couldn't just spend a winter somewhere else. If I could, I might try it. But I don't know what would happen. Sometimes I wonder if I was in like a steady climate where it was always nice, might it exaggerate my cycle? Like, is perhaps the natural rhythm of the climate here in Quebec an anchor for me? That it grounds my cycle in some way? Because a 3 year cycle is harder to handle than a 1 year cycle. It can go more out of control. And so, and it also seems to me, like from my own experience of it, um, and from like what I've heard, it's like in the research, it's the mania that causes the depression. So the worse the mania gets, um, the worse the depression will get. The longer the mania goes on, the longer the depression will go on. I wonder, put into like a climate where, especially also if I really am connecting to nature's energy, a climate that's just growing constantly, that doesn't begin to slow down, would it be harder for me to control my mania? Would my mania just stretch out way the fuck longer so that perhaps the first winter I wouldn't get any depression, but then I would, well, two things. One, it goes too long and it could go right to going totally psychotic out of control, without countermeasures. And would it cause, yeah, I would experiment with that possibly if I could. But I also wonder, yeah, would it actually be better, or does this climate actually ground me? All right, so Desitron's story is about a computer science student living in Auckland's Central Park in a hammock while descending into mental illness. Interesting. I've always enjoyed mental illness and fiction, even before I was crazy. And Francisco says, I ironically think that sounds like a fascinating story. I'm a fan of Rudy Rucker, and that's the sort of thing he would write. He's one of the founders of cyberpunk. So I'm not sure why you're saying ironically. Oh, unironically. Okay, I was going to say the word ironic doesn't fit there. Yes, I also unironically think that sounds like a good idea. Desitron says studying artificial intelligence triggers doubts about agency and the reality of the self. Yeah, I can see that. And the idea that we don't have agency, that free will is some sort of illusion, or also the idea of that the self itself is an illusion. Those really bothered me when I first was able to understand them. And I had to sort of go into denial about those when I first, and it wasn't from reading anything or studying anything that I first found this experience of realizing that free will might be a total illusion. It was during a period where I didn't, it was when I was still cut off from the world. I was in like my hermit phase and just thinking a lot of my own. I noticed it in my own, and I found when that started to make sense to me and wasn't just like, ooh, a trippy idea that seemed ridiculous because free will is so obvious, I found it fucking hurt. There's things that learning them just stretches your consciousness in a way that is fucking painful. And for me, I'm not even saying like believing it is in deciding it's true, but that sort of idea of you're believing something or you're understanding something when you're believing it, when you're experiencing it as true. As I first started breaking through that, I found it hurt. Like it didn't, it would even like it would cause actual headaches thinking about it for a while. But even before the actual headache, there was like a, not a physical pain, but a pain in the internal world, the thought space. It was really, really painful to experience like the belief or the observation of no free will or the reality of the possibility that the self's an illusion. Although that doesn't mean it's necessarily nothing. But, and so I would have to just drop back into a denial of it. I'd have to take a break from thinking about it. And I would even realize like, I'm putting this away because it hurts, not because it doesn't seem to be true. But I found by going back to it over and over, I was able to enter that space and not be uncomfortable with it. And there's a way, like if it and the thing about holding sort of opposite beliefs and just being aware that you don't know which it is. So rather than choosing, you accept that perhaps both are true in some weird metaphysical way. It gets to where it no longer hurts your identity to find out one or the other isn't true. So before, if I was presented with some sort of fact that showed for certain there was no free will and solved it, it's like it would have damaged my sense of identity to be forced to admit that we don't have agency, there's no free will. Or if the self was an illusion, that's not true anymore for me. It's like, okay, if we don't have free will, I'm fine with that. And I still have a sense of self that fits into that. But also if it's the reverse, if there was some sudden proof that there is free will, and I had to abandon that idea of reality without free will, that also doesn't damage my identity anymore. I'm okay with whatever's there. I'm not sure what's there. But so when I find out more on one side or the other, it doesn't hurt anymore. Which is one of the reasons it's, be careful what ideas you attach your identity to. Because then anytime you're presented evidence to the contrary of an idea or a belief, it hurts you. And so you're motivated to either deny it, or if you can't deny it, it causes some sort of breakdown in identities and extremely painful. If instead you accept that we really don't know what the fuck's going on at all. Like, I'm not aware of anything but my own awareness, even. We could all be brains in a jar. And like the way, to the answer of do you believe in God, I would go with just yes, I believe in God, but I don't know what God is. And I have tattooed on my chest the old Black family motto. It's a nice synchronicity for me that this was the family motto, but it was non crooks said looks, which means not the cross, but it's light. And that's the way I've been looking at God for a while. And so to find out anything about God, that it's not as anthropomorphic as we might like, that it's more a base nature, or that it this or that, doesn't damage my sense of self anymore because I'm not attached to the details. I'm more comfortable just being aware of how much I don't know. I'm not sure if any of that made any sense. Man, I'm tired of talking. I want to read through a little more. I'm just going to take a break from talking for a minute, and then maybe I'll respond to something. Look, you guys are interesting. Okay, so Nico Pass says, please save this chat. It's very helpful. Yeah, and sorry to the rest of you guys, because I'm sure that sucks. I was so tired of talking and having to respond to everything. There's a lot of really good shit written here. It's nice to just take it in for a minute and not have to respond to it all. But yeah, I think the live chat thing saves automatically. I don't take it down or anything. Becker, good to see you. Good morning. Yeah, I would like to respond to all that, but I'm so fucking tired of talking. I wish I could just tag in Grizz to respond to the end of this. Everything you're saying is very interesting, Francisco. We used to do like conversations with the audience a lot. Ryan got busy and I got depressed and dealing with some shit and busy. So we haven't done them in a while, but we might try to do more again in the future. You sound like you'd be a fascinating person to have on for a podcast. If you like the idea, right into sorting myself out zero, and we could keep like the sort of your email on file until we're feeling up to it again. And Mike, thanks for those messages of encouragement. That means a lot to me because, yeah, in this depressed state of mind, I don't always see any value at all to what I'm saying. So thanks for that feedback. It's helpful to counter the assholes inside of me that are shitting on me all the time. And it's funny, yeah, like the way you can, like I said before, how you can shit on anything. You can shit on something for being low quality, or you can find a way to shit on something for being higher quality. I also notice, like, with doing this channel, when I'm depressed, I can shit on myself both ways about it, like, simultaneously. I can feel like shit that I'm not doing more on the channel or doing better, while simultaneously feeling like shit that I'm doing the channel at all. Like, I can have one voice inside me berating me that I ever thought it was a good idea and saying that everything I've done is shit and I never should have started. While simultaneously another voice is also shitting on me that I'm not doing more on the channel. Yeah, and so Mike says, you're fine, man. It must be very draining talking without direct in person feedback. I'm sure it feels like a chore after a while, especially with how much thought you put into every comment. Yeah, and it's also just that I'm so depressed and so worn out. I've been wrestling a lot with internal dragons, dealing with a lot of problems. I just want to die. And oh, sorry, the moment I was thinking like mythologically, sort of like, yeah, I just want to go into my winter crypt. I just want to hibernate. And I've been pushing myself and dealing with some stuff. And so Space Dude says, why was I recommended this? I have no idea. But I hope you have a great night, Space Dude. Grizz says, tell these manifestors to manifest being able to tag me in by the next full moon. Well, you just told them. Vakur says, I hope you'll get better soon. My heart is breaking when I hear you're not well because your talks help me a lot. Thank you, Vakur. That's very sweet. And I'm glad my talks have helped. But it's all right. I'm okay with being unwell right now. It's not some great cosmic wrong that I'm going through difficulties. And it's okay to be brutally depressed. I can handle it. I really appreciate the I hope you'll get better soon. And I'm always like, I'm not holding on to the bad pattern. Like, I'm not holding on to the things. I will allow things to magically improve and for cycles to break. But most likely, I'm going to go through the same cycle I've gone through. And so I'll probably be depressed right through the winter. I'm not even like hoping to not be depressed. I'd like to, I'm hoping to get some stuff taken care of in the next little while. And then just to ease myself into the crypt. If there's not outside problems and there's not shit I still have to force myself to do, the deep winter depression can be just beautiful. For me, a year is a lot like a day, and the winter's like the night. If there's not outside problems, and if I can finish some stuff up and get the wood in the shed and various things, I do allow myself to basically shut down in the winter, to take, the few months of winter and do basically nothing. Like, I'll hang out with my kids, or like last winter, I started doing this channel. Fall's harder. It's the transition. It's the dying, and I'm still trying to finish up some projects. And there have been some problems that have come up that I would like to wish hadn't happened, but I'm trusting that I'm getting the problems I need. I just got to push for a little while, and then I can fucking lie down and hibernate, or lie down and enjoy some time with like that energy of death in the winter, everything frozen, and I can be really depressed, but also so content in that state if I can just get through the transition right. The hard part's the dying, not the being dead. So I imagine the depression will stay heavy. But hopefully I can ease myself into it and have a pleasant experience of the winter. Grizz says, is there a subpersonality that like being pooed on? I have no idea what you're talking about. Is that in reference to something else? Like, what? So those defecations are in service to? I don't know. Maybe it's because my brain's not working. I don't understand what you're saying, Grizz. McFace says a really good album to listen to is Sleep Cycle by Deacon. Helps lift the mood a little. Never heard of it. But maybe some of us will check it out. Sometimes when I'm depressed, uplifting music helps. Other times, depressing music helps. Lately, I've been listening to G.G. Allen's acoustic When I Die. That's been helpful when I was really depressed. Mike has another comment. Thanks for joining us tonight, Mike. Seriously, some of the shit you said meant a lot. Glad you turned up tonight. So Mike says, as someone else said, you're fighting the good fight. We all have demons, but you share your experiences so others learn. I reckon you feel you're spreading misery sometimes, but that's not the case at all. All right, good. Yeah, and in a way, I did not know why I was coming on at all tonight. I was too depressed to even try to frame what the fuck it is I expected I was doing, rather than even trying to find a reason to go on beyond that I knew I didn't want to not do it. I just was trying to accept non judgmentally that I was too depressed to even know why I'm going on and that I was just going to come on and see what the fuck happened. Desitron says, I'll hope for a bright spot to come along for you if you don't have the energy for hope. I will take that. Thank you for that, my friend. I will take any sort of prayers and positive intention or whatever the fuck anyone's own belief is. Yeah, I'm not too proud to accept that help. Grizz says, fall and the dying. Do you have a ritual for that? I have a few. I think I'll leave it at that. Francisco says, you're a good person. You're better than the stuff that's trending by the millions on YouTube. The stuff that is totally vacuous. Well, thank you. That's very kind. Glad some of you are getting something out of this. And who knows what the fuck this will turn into in the future. Because the other nice advantage of dying every winter the way I do is I'm born again every spring. And as much as I try to be realistic about what I can handle, I'm not putting too many limitations on what I might be in the future. Like compared to where I was 10 years ago, I never would have thought I would have gotten to this point. And so I don't know and how the fuck I'm going to change. You always keep thinking you found the person you are. Once you get like old, like some of us have, and you look at teenagers declaring how certain they know who they are. It's funny. Then you get, you turn 20 or whatever, and you have that moment of realizing, oh no, I'm this new person, but this is the real me. I've noticed that never stops. So I don't assume I'll be the same person in the future that I am now. Maybe in the future, who knows what I'll turn into, what this turns into. But I'm glad some people are getting something out of it. Okay, Grizz says poo when you poo on yourself for not doing more on the channel. There's parts that like tearing down. Is there a part that likes being torn down? Ah, I see. Right, those other messages. Yeah, Yeah, there are things inside that like being torn down. And there are things inside that want to be torn right down to death. Yeah, there are things inside that want to be unmade, things inside that want to die. Mike says, your depression and pain can be an asset for others. If you're going to experience these troubling times either way, why not try to make the most of it? Pain is the best teacher sometimes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way I'm trying to treat life, the suffering of life in general, and the difficulties of my own particular expression of consciousness. I'm trying to make the most of it. And that was the biggest turning point for me. Yeah, so if anyone's actually watched to this point, or something for anyone who's new is struggling with some sort of mental illness. At first, it's like you want to reject it, you go into denial or fighting it or wanting to be cured. And when I just didn't want to be crazy, when that was just devastating and I couldn't face it, and all I wanted where it was like, it's my first time after my first cycle, I tried to rehabilitate back to normal. Went into a worse cycle, broke even further, and then just couldn't handle it. For me, the big turning point was to stop wishing I wasn't fucking lunatic anymore and to decide instead, okay, I'm a fucking lunatic. How do I make the best of this? So I'm trying not to waste any time railing against reality. And like there's all that dark shit inside that just naturally starts doing it. I try to be mindful of that, like that it's occurring, to observe the thoughts, to know those thoughts aren't me. And I see no point in attaching to those and adding energy to it. If I'm going to add energy to a thought about my problems, my limitations, I try to actually have gratitude for it. Being itself is defined by limitation. Difficulties, weaknesses, these are a fundamental part of human consciousness. And so I try not to attach to the naturally occurring thoughts that want to just be outraged and rail against it. And instead, try to see how this is being done for me and not to me. All right. Jim Bob Sherwood. I like that name. Any tips for combating procrastination? It's destroying my life. Okay, I have always had a hard problem with procrastination, even before like I went bipolar. Um, I would like leave things till the last minute it could be done so often, so that then I just have to do it fucking constantly to get it done. Yeah, that fucking is so hard on us. What kinds of things in particular are you trying not to procrastinate on? One thing I would say, like, if you're ever on a stream again when I'm not so fucking depressed, ask me again when I'm thinking better. building up your motivation to not procrastinate. Don't let it be vague in your mind what the problem is. Define it and think it through. Observe what are the shitty effects of this procrastination. Don't let them just, don't be in denial about it and don't be vague about it. When there's, try to be honest about all the problems the procrastination is causing. Also, it's like try to contemplate that deeply and be aware of it. Then, in another frame of mind, try to contemplate how things would be better if you didn't procrastinate and try to actually like envision it, act it out a bit. Like imaginatively live in the world where if you got everything done as soon as you could and then took your time with things done, how much better it could be. Really visualize that. Also, the hardest part can be getting yourself going sometimes. And not that the rest will be easy, but that's often the hardest. So, for instance, when I'm trying to get myself exercising, and I know this is getting a little different even than procrastination because I'm trying to get myself to do it at all. Before trying to get myself to put any effort into exercising, because I often stop exercising in the fall. Like, yeah, fuck, at the most once a week, I'm doing just a tiny bit of exercise. There's other stuff I'm trying to get taken care of, so I'm letting that slip. Often I'll fall off exercising in the falls and go through the winter without exercising. Then when spring comes and I want to get myself going, instead of making myself put any effort into it, I first try to establish the routine of starting. And so instead of trying to do any, like, and it's depending how out of shape you are, I just pick however many push-ups it is that is so easy I can fucking do it. Even if like I'm really out of shape and lazy and it's like just if 3 push-ups is all you can do without putting effort into it, you just do 3 push-ups every day. And you don't worry about carrying through on it. It's just to create the habit of getting started every day. And then from there, I usually, if I can just maintain, although I won't go as low as 3. I don't like to do my push-ups flat on the floor. I like to do them against the stairs because I fucked up my lower back. It's easier on my back. So, but I'll start off at doing just something like 10 or 15, which is very, very easy. Like on an incline. The hardest part is getting myself just to form that routine. Then you kind of just naturally, once you make yourself do it every day, and even if I'm depressed, sometimes I can get myself to just do that because I honestly don't push myself further. Once that habit's formed, I will start like, okay, well, fuck it. I'm doing push-ups anyway. I'll do 20. Okay, well, fuck it. I'll do 30. And then within a couple weeks, I'm doing push-ups to where it's as many as I can do. So whatever it is you're procrastinating, as stupid as it seems, see if you can just get yourself to sit down and start doing it for a minute and then let yourself stop. But create that habit that so say you're talking about school, every single day you make yourself sit down and write 5 words on your assignment. That creates the habit of sitting down every day. It becomes easier to put more work into it. And another thing that helps me are also sort of not even just procrastination, but actually 100% giving up on something can be a real problem for me. Not just procrastination, but fuck it, I'm not going to do anything is a fucking reward. And right now I have something that I'm trying to get finished before I let myself, hibernate for the winter or crawl into my tomb. So I'm forcing myself to be active with something that I really want to just fucking quit. And this is like very fucking immature and a stupid motivation, but I'll just be honest about it. I had a few dollars. I bought myself a toy. I like collecting fucking toys. I bought myself a toy and I'm not allowed to open it and play with it until I finish this project. And I found, as stupid as that fucking is, it keeps me going. Um, there was a reissue put out this year uh, of the Generation 1 Soundwave with all 5 of his cassettes. Well, like it's 3 packages. So it's Soundwave and Buzzsaw, but they also released Ravage, Frenzy, and Rumble and Laserbeat. And I fucking wanted those so bad as a kid. Never had them. They were just released this summer, and I got a great deal, like cheaper than they were in the store. They're not opened. The packaging is damaged, but fuck it, who cares? I got it cheaper than they were in the store, and I had the cash for it, and I allowed myself to buy it just because I knew I had this project I wanted to follow through on. It was hard not to quit, so I treated myself to buying them, and I stare at them every fucking day. I've got Soundwave sitting right there. It keeps me working at it, as stupid as that fucking sounds. But I've found if I can appease my inner child, somehow even the fucking monsters in me are easy on my inner child. Everything inside loves my inner child. So when I can appease my inner child, I find that very helpful. So for me, collecting vintage toys has been really, really therapeutic. But yeah, I've got a Soundwave. I've got him sitting right there, and I want to open him so fucking badly and play with him, but I'm not allowed to until I finish my project. So if there's something you can treat yourself to, especially if it's something where you normally, it's like, I should be, because I'm poor. I should be more careful with my money, but I could do it. So I did. I treated myself to something, and then you got to stick to it though, too. You can't just fucking go ahead and use it. But I'll often do that with things. I'll buy myself a book. I'm not allowed to read it until I finish something, or buy myself a toy and I'm not allowed to open it until. And I'm realizing now I asked you if you wanted to be more specific and then went on that long ramble without looking to see if you gave me more info. I should have done that before going on so long. And that wasn't so bad talking for a while because I took a break. I'm already at 2 hours. So, considering I thought I might only do 10 or 15 minutes, and since some of you are getting something out of this, I guess I'm not doing so bad. All right, let's see what Mike has to say. I think the best thing to do when one is depressed is maintain the life they would live if they were not depressed. When you do that, you realize the pain doesn't affect you. By coming on tonight to stream, I believe you are trying to live on in spite of your pain, and that is the best thing you can do when depressed. Okay, I like all of that. I would definitely recommend anyone tries that. Now, on another level, though, because it's also, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. And with everything, it's not about something being so absolute. It's about you play with different things and see how well they work for you. So, yes, but for me, that only works if it's within reason. Like, for instance, because you can take anything too far. So, if I tried to live the way I live when I'm not depressed, that won't work. If I push myself too fucking hard, it's not going to work because the way I live when I'm not depressed often is manic. That's a really far cry. When I'm not depressed, I'm way the fuck more active. I have to be realistic with what I can handle. If I push myself for too long to do too much, there's internal energy sources that get depleted and there's internal pressure gauges. I'm not sure how else to describe it, so I'll use that mechanics. I got to be careful with that shit. And for me in the winter, So I do it kind of different. I try to act the way I would act if I'm flowing well with the direct depression and making the most of it. Being realistic about it. I have to allow myself a fair amount of hibernation. But once I get a couple things taken care of, like once the wood's all in the shed for the winter and I get my project done and I'm allowed to open my toys, um, then I'm going to have a couple months where I can shut down. I can just meditate for hours and hours. I can relax. I can sleep as much as I want. And for a good chunk of the winter, just I won't have anything I have to do. Well, I guess I'm separating the channel from this. Like, other than the channel, I leave myself a couple months in the winter where I just got to put wood in the stove and eat every day and decide and spend some time with my kids. And when I'm nice and settled into a good depression, I can be simultaneously very happy and depressed. And I take a few months very, very restful. I have to allow myself to do that. But at the same time, but for some people, especially if they have less fucking weight of depression or they have more coping, going full on, trying to live fully like you're not depressed could work. But I'm going to do part of that. Um, I'm going to do as much of that as I can while allowing myself to slow down. I'm trying to live on in spite of my pain. For some reason, pain's part of my experience. And I think it's serving in some way. I'm trying to live on and to get the maximum benefit from the pain. When I'm able to try to. There are times when I'm so depressed where I also, at least, for a while, have to give up on even that and just, yeah, I do fall into times where I'm living on in spite of my pain. But sometimes I can live on in a way where I simultaneously would not choose to be feeling the pain, but where I can achieve states of being grateful for it while going through it. Francisco says Kierkegaard wrote that most people are in despair and don't even know it. The ones who do know it have an opportunity to reach greater heights than they would have otherwise imagined. Yeah, there's a lot in that. And I've thought back to like before I was bipolar. Before I was bipolar, if you'd asked me if I'd experienced depression or anxiety, I would have said no. I would have said I have normal sadness and I had like anxiety that we don't call anxiety, like nervousness, because if it's appropriate to the situation, we tend to call it, it can be more the nervous. Like I used to play in bands and was friends with Lloyd Kaufman. And so, you encounter famous people, you're nervous to meet someone famous, or you're going to go on stage, so you're nervous. But no one would call that anxiety. That's those normal butterflies before stuff. I would acknowledge like that normal level of nervousness at times, the nervousness before a test or when you're late for something. And I would have acknowledged just normal sadness. But when I look back on it, there were times I experienced depression and anxiety, but did not know what the fuck they were. And so even as I experienced them, I was in a sort of state of denial where I wasn't fully allowing myself to be aware of it. It was nowhere near the levels I've experienced since then. Looking back, I can remember now times where I was depressed for an evening. And there was that bowling ball in the pit of the stomach, and like nowhere near the other kind of depression I've had. But like it it had physical symptoms. But because it didn't make sense to me, I would go into a weird denial. That old me, if asked when feeling a bit of depression, if something was wrong, would say, "No, I'm fine." And do the no, no, I'm fine. And I also had some times, and probably more in the couple years right before my accident than earlier, where I was starting to have some anxiety in social situations, but I didn't know what it was and I didn't allow myself to be fully aware of it. I wonder if I'd become aware of those and dealt with them differently. And I wonder if I'd expanded, if I'd done some self discovery and some of the philosophy and psychology work, and if I'd faced what I was experiencing that I was in denial of, would I not have gone completely insane when I got hit by the bus? Because from what I understand from my family history, like there's a genetic component. I was predisposed to bipolar disorder. But they were saying that if I hadn't gotten hit by the bus, they said it might have come on at another time. But also, my bipolar is setting quite late for, especially now, people are getting it younger and younger. I was 27 when it hit. They said that getting hit by the bus caused it, but that I had the predisposition for it, like that it was the combination. They said that if I hadn't gotten hit by the bus, something else might have triggered it at some point, or that it would have been possible that I just remained, that I would just carry the potential to go fully crazy without it actually manifesting if the bus accident hadn't happened. I don't know about that, but I wonder even more if I'd examined some of these deeper philosophical and metaphysical issues and come to grips with reality in a better way before I'd been hit by the bus, would I have become bipolar or not? I'm tired of talking again. I'm going to read for a minute. Yeah, and I don't think I have to try to respond to everything. I don't get a ton of people turning up when I do these, but it's a really high quality community. Now, I don't know if I'm done talking for the night or if I'll start talking again in a minute, but as much as it makes horrible content, fuck it. I'm just going to enjoy the comments quietly for a minute. Okay, Jimbo, if you have an exam at 8:30, I really hope I am not keeping you up because a fucking good night's sleep is important before your fucking exam. Even if you procrastinated and didn't study enough, you'll still do better with a good night's sleep. That's really important before an exam. All right, if you procrastinate with everything, you're not going to fix procrastinating everything always all at once. Um, Try to take smaller steps. And the way to make the smaller steps work best is find what's the one thing that not procrastinating on or improving on would have the biggest effect in your life. So look at all the things you procrastinate on. Pick one that working on it will remove the most problems or and create the most benefit. Focus on that one first. And then as the benefit, like, because picking just one and working on just the general problem of procrastination will make it easier. Like you're learning the skill to not procrastinate. Don't try to do it all at once with everything. Pick the one thing that would have the best effect. Start on it. And yeah, the various advice I'd given on that and whatever better advice you can find from other people, apply that to one thing. Don't try. And so also, yeah, someone was saying that my advice sounded like Peterson's. Yeah, and sometimes I feel bad agreeing with Peterson as often as I do because it's not like there's so many things where I agree with Peterson, not because I heard it from him. It was why I liked him. Peterson got addicted to me when I first found him because so many things, confirmation bias. It's so fun to hear someone else tell you you're right. There's just so many things that I'd had to work out on my own that I found the most useful was shit Peterson talked about. Uh, which is why sometimes I'm so good at like quoting Peterson because some of his stuff sticks really easy. But also, yeah, and I feel bad about it because it's like I just like embraced being crazy sort of and went all shamany and like talk to angels and do all kinds of weird weird shit and came up with these insights from a place of chaos and insanity. And then the same conclusions Peterson came to after trying to be so scientific and orderly. It's like I feel bad, like as if it's almost discrediting. Because, yeah, do you really want a total lunatic to agree with you too often? But anyway, so pick the one that will have the biggest effect. See what you can do with it. And then once you get it going, work on one until the reward's coming back. Until, you've learned, you've improved on one thing, not procrastinating. Do it long enough that you start to get that reward coming back from reality. And then that will hopefully provide you some encouragement to then work on the next thing. Okay, now not procrastinating with this worked so well. I'm going to move on to the next thing and see if you can gradually improve them all that way. Okay, so further down, Jimbo, you're saying you can't break a video game addiction. Okay, so there you've identified something that really interferes. Um, because someone doesn't need to have something like a video game addiction to procrastinate. You can procrastinate and you're not doing something you're addicted to. But yeah, a video game addiction will create such a massive force pressuring you to procrastinate. So if you're naturally one to procrastinate, that's a problem on its own. That's almost like a resistance to moving forward. the desire to procrastinate, the laziness, the whatnot, the difficulty to get some motion going. But the video game addiction, rather than being sort of a restriction holding you back, is like a pressure pushing against you, pushing you backwards. So that even if you build up, you're lifting that resistance to procrastinate and the video game addiction hits, that's just going to push you right the fuck back. So, how serious are you? If you're really serious that procrastinating is fucking you up, and like if you're falling behind in your classes and you don't want to waste your time at school, you want to move forward, maybe one dramatic thing you can do is fucking pack up your video game system. Like if it's console you're addicted to, pack that up, give it to someone else, and don't let them give it back to you until you're caught up in school. Like remove the actual ability to play it. Lock yourself out of the video games you're addicted to. Then also set yourself a reward of I can have the video games back once, the semester's over, or once I'm caught up, I'm allowed to start playing so much at a time. But like if this is serious for you and if you don't want to fuck up school, take a big step. Like, or if for someone else, if it was alcohol, and you live a life of having, your liquor cabinet stocked, get the fucking alcohol out of your hands. Make the decision when you're stronger to get the temptation out of the way. But if the video game addiction's that out of control, you might want to see if you can cut yourself cold turkey, but allow yourself a goal to work towards. Like if I can get caught up or if I can just get through the semester, I get the video games back. And if you can learn how to restrict yourself, then maybe you can go back to playing video games a responsible amount. Yeah, Mike said I didn't mean to say that, as you should push yourself to the point you set goals too high for yourself. I think it's important you give yourself credit for whatever effort you put in. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Mike's making another great point for Jim Bob. Study hall or someone to do schoolwork with. Yeah, actually, and for schoolwork or I've had in college like a different strategy to get myself exercising more, because this is before I was bipolar and when I was younger and it was easier to get back in shape. When I wanted to get working out, the way to do it was just talk to my buddy Cade, who likes to work out, and just having a partner for something. So if you really procrastinate with schoolwork, find a study group or a friend, find someone who doesn't have a problem procrastinating and agree to do it with them. And you have them hold you accountable, because it'll be harder if like there's someone in your class that likes to get their work done on time and wants to have a partner to work with or already has a study group going. Once you make that commitment to someone else, that will help you hold yourself responsible, because to not do it, and yeah, it's like that idea. One of the pressures to work with, our own nature. One thing about human nature is we have a pressure to live up to social responsibility. We care what other people think about us, and it matters to us that we live up to what we say we're going to do. So if you make a commitment to someone else, you will have an internal pressure to encourage you. The thought of not going means you have to face letting people down. And when you do go, you will get positive reinforcement for going. They'll be glad to see you. You get the rewards because it feels good to live up to our commitments. So if you can find someone else who wants to study with you, make a commitment to study with them on, the regular time limit. Like set out the schedule with them, especially if they're better at not procrastinating. and then you've got someone to hold you accountable. Or yeah, for if someone's really trying to get themselves working out, if that's your top priority, get yourself a workout buddy. I found that worked really well in college. Because often there'd be days even where like there's days where I would be like, fuck it, I'm not going to the gym today. But my buddy's like, all right, well, if you're not going, I'm going. I'd be like, oh, fuck's sakes, all right, I'm coming. Then there's other days where he didn't feel like going. And I was like, well, I'm going. And so even though neither of us were really that solid, we'll go every time, I found when we put ourselves together, um, we ended up going most days. And Grizz says if you can't break an addiction, aim for functional addict. Yeah, like obviously for me, I have no problem with being a functional addict. I'm addicted to cigarettes and weed and coffee. I'm content with these addictions. I'm at peace with them. I have them at levels that work well for me. They're functional alcoholics, but also for some people, they can't find the functional level and it has to be all or nothing. But especially like, who we were just talking about, video game addiction. With that one, I have a feeling if you, especially now, if you realize you're behind in classes, if you could cut yourself off for a while and discipline yourself to not go back to it until you've gotten caught up, I have a feeling you could get to a functional addiction where, and you can in fact use a motivation like that to, or an addiction like that to motivate yourself. Um, Again, it's a much stupider example, but like I'm addicted to collecting vintage toys now. Like I fucking love it. And I can use that to my benefit. When I'm depressed, I can spend a lot of time like shopping around for them. But also, yeah, at times where I need to motivate myself to do something that I'm having trouble doing. And it's like, if I've got a couple dollars, I'll take advantage of that addiction. And it's one I know I could break. Like if I'm having trouble with money, obviously I go months and months and months where I can't buy any fucking toy at all. But but because I can control the addiction, I will amp it up when I'm really trying to motivate myself. When I know I have a bit of money, I intentionally, YouTube videos about other adult nerds collecting toys. I research a toy line, I get really into it, I build up that desire for what I want to buy, and I work towards it. Um, you could manage your video game addiction right. And if like for you, there's nothing better than like 48 hours playing video games, like a weekend of just locking the world away and playing video games. Maybe you can get yourself to where you can motivate yourself to do 2 weeks of, incredibly disciplined work on things to earn yourself that weekend off. Okay. Been aiming for functional addict for the last 5 years of your life. Need to take 5 grams of magic mushrooms or something. Depending on the type, that could be quite a lot. Um, Maybe I'll throw my computer out of the window. Yeah, well, I wouldn't throw it away, but if what it takes is giving it to someone else, like getting it out of, or sometimes even just putting something in a box and in the closet can be enough. Sometimes you don't even need to lock it away from yourself, but you box it up and tell yourself, I won't use this until. Or if you don't have the discipline for that, give it to someone and say, don't give this back to me until I've accomplished such and such. Oh, okay. Mike's making a good point here as well. Wait, where did that go? Sorry, this jumped around. Where others are getting work done, it's much easier to focus, especially if you express how overwhelmed you are. You aren't the only one in that situation, I guarantee it. Yeah, and so also, even aside from having a study partner, um, the fuck's the term for it? There's like a group naturally will want to fall into cohesion. So yeah, if you just immerse yourself in a space where a lot of people are doing something, the subconscious desire to conform mixed with the way uh, we kind of adapt to each other, like the way at events we synchronize with each other naturally. Yeah, if there's a study hall or somewhere where there's a bunch of students studying, just going and sitting down in the middle of that group, you will connect to that energy. Also, the way our environment affects us. If you are in a place that is designed for studying, it sends all kinds of cues to your subconscious to study. So even if you don't have a study partner, just going where other people are studying or going to like a library or study hall where the room is designed for that will encourage it. And yeah, and Grizz says not to throw the computer out the window. If you need to get rid of it, mail it to him. Jim Bob says it's honestly just nice to talk to someone. Well, I'm glad you showed up to talk to us tonight. And Jewish Wookie says, I love you, Mercury. I love you too, Jewish Wookie. I'm surprised. I can still feel all that physical energy of depression, but in some of the other vast space inside me, you find folks have built up a very pleasant, loving feeling. I am both very depressed and very content and full of love and even happy while also being depressed. Thanks to you folks. So Jim Bomb says, good night's sleep is fucking long gone. Well, I hope I am just providing a way to pass the time because you weren't going to sleep anyway. I can't imagine the fact that I come on is going to make anyone stay up later than they want to. Mike says, I still procrastinate a lot. I second what you said. Pick one thing and then give yourself credit for doing that thing. Yeah. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to your previous self. Yeah, absolutely. That's another one of Peterson's things that so many of us have discovered for itself. Fuck comparing ourselves to anyone else. Chris says chaos is where Osiris's phallus comes from. Egyptian mythology is so interesting at the moment. It's all just a vague blur in my memory. You follow that by Peterson's bit on Egyptian mythology is my favorite. Yeah, maybe I don't know if I've seen him. I must have. Because I watched 3 of his full lectures. So I must have already seen that. And it's just not coming to mind because I've got all the depression stupidity. Yeah, I haven't watched much of JP's stuff in a long time. Maybe I'll watch that sometime soon. Although I have started watching Vervaeke's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. I watched the first 7 or 8 or something. I'm not sure. I'm using the external memory on my history to keep track of where I am. So I'm not sure how far in I am. But I watched the first bit. Vervaeke's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis is fucking awesome once you get into it. I think in the last stream, I'd said that I tried to watch it a few times and never got past the first 20 minutes of the first lecture. But a while ago, I started right back at the beginning. And I was really bored with the first 20 minutes because I'd seen it more than once, but didn't remember it well enough to skip. But if you just stick out past the first half of the first one, just the second half gets really interesting. And if anyone hasn't watched Vervaeke's Meaning Crisis, he shows the 9 dot test at one point. He'll give the answer pretty quick. And I almost just because I was doing something at the time while I was watching it, I almost just let it play, and then I was like, "What the fuck am I doing? I want to try the 9 dot test." Uh, and I had a pleasant experience figuring that out, and that was fun. Um, and then really got me into. He starts talking about shamanism, the second half of the first one. That was enough. Watching the full first one got me hooked, and so far every single episode of that has been awesome. Vervaeke's got a fucking fantastic, uh, at least so far. He's up to 40 something now. I think I'm definitely gonna watch right through that whole thing. It's awesome. Good night, Grizz. Sleep well. And other people saying good night. Davor says, just joining. Why unwell? Depression. I've also got a cold, but mostly, yeah, I'm just feeling very unwell with depression. I'm feeling better now. This interaction's actually, although, yeah, I'm still depressed. I'm also happy now. But yeah, just the slow dying of the fall or preparing to hibernate for the winter. Okay, well, hopefully, talking to a therapist in December will help you with that, Jim Bob. And Davor says, good advice about accountability. Okay, Mike's saying something. Fuck yeah. Thanks so much for joining us, Mike. You're fucking awesome. And if me and Ryan get around to doing more podcasts at some point, it'd be great to have you on as well. Thanks. I love your contributions. So, Mike says, also on the accountability note, if you don't fulfill your commitments every time, it's important not to punish yourself. It's easy to trick yourself into thinking you can't do something. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Like me trying to live up to the commitment of showing up every full moon. 2 full moons ago, I missed one. So far, I've missed one since I started doing this. And it's like things inside wanted to punish me for it. I had to actively maintain mindfulness of that's not me. And I had to choose not to go with those thoughts and make it any worse. And Mike continues, when you fail constantly, remember that you can do it even if you're behind in every aspect. It seems impossible at times, but every success is like leveling up in a game. The more you do, the better you get, and the easier it is. Yeah. Also, there's a value to just trying and failing. And yeah, often trying and failing leads to then you try again and you do a little better, and one day there's some sort of success. But in a way that I don't feel capable of expressing, I believe there is a value to just struggling, to just doing your best. And even if the end result is failure, followed by death, so there is no further success to build off of, there's still like a sort of value to that I don't know how to put into words. Zoidberg says, room too dark to clean. Yours or mine? Good night, Jim Bob. Well, thanks for joining us for the live stream. And yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad I came on. All right, so people are saying goodnight to each other. I'm caught up to the end. Now that I'm caught up, does anyone have any last minute thing? All right, so Mike says, I'd love to be on a podcast. How should I contact you to arrange that? So, right into sorting myself out 0 at gmail.com, I think. It's in the description of most videos. I didn't put it in the description of tonight's, but I assume if you hit about on the channel, or if you look under almost any other, I think it's sorting myself out 0, like the number, at gmail.com. I don't check that shit. It would be too much for me. I don't like checking too many messages. So Ryan and Grizz handle that. But also, if anyone wants to write to me, like if it's not about setting up a talk or anything, like if anyone wants to write to me to tell me something, if you just send an email to sorting myself out 0 and say, hey, this is for Mercury, Ryan or Grizz will forward it to me. And if anyone wants to do a podcast with either me or Ryan or both of us, just write into the channel. We haven't been doing any for a while. Ryan's very busy. And I've had a lot going on, but we do intend to try to do more of it when we can. And I don't know how quickly things will change. So I don't know if we would get back to you soon or not. But yeah, just send us an email and we'll get back to you once we're doing them again. And Bojan, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, says everything we do stays written in the past forever. Yeah, and there's some interesting theories that it's not just written in the past forever, but the entire past is still physically there. I've often recommended the book Jerusalem by Alan Moore, but I fucking love that book. If you're interested in that theory and you like fiction, Alan Moore's book Jerusalem takes that to the extreme in a delightful way. Dan says, so glad to see you here tonight, brother. Thank you. You are very welcome. And I'm going to do my best to make every full moon. I don't know if I'll be able to or not, but yeah, as much as I try to accept the past, and yeah, fuck it. By the way I should look at it is I missed that one for a reason. It's for the best, and hey, I had no choice. It was my nature interacting with the situation. So I'll assume it's good for some reason I missed one. But I would like to make that the only one I miss. Mike says, okay. Yeah, so Ryan and Grizz both have access to the sorting myself out 0 at gmail.com. And Francisco says, what we do in life echoes on eternity, from Gladiator. Yeah, in many ways. All right, wow, I actually stayed on for almost 3 hours. That's way the fuck longer than I thought I would. And some people got something out of this rambling nonsense. So, good night to anyone, to everyone. Love you all. I wish you all great blessings and only the best problems that are most in your service. Maybe I'll turn up again before the next full moon. If not, I'll at least see whoever wants to come back then. All right. So, yeah, I love you too, Francisco. And yeah, I'm glad that you're going to keep in touch, Mike. All right. Good night, everyone.